Okay, this is Austerlitz. The first of the NBS series came out with the earliest version of the rules, the 1.0 rules. I'm going to be playing it under the 3.0 rules, more or less. There are definite problems. First of all, the terrain, the way the layers of terrain work is different in this game, so you gotta kind of pull the old 2.0 rules for that, which they're like the old CWB rules. The way they work is basically to determine if something's blocking. Well, you see if anything higher is in between, but between the attacker, between the two, attacker and target. But the only real weird part of it is there's this concept of each layer of the layer cake, it's a layer cake type of terrain, is considered to have sort of a spine going across it. So I'm at the top of the spine here, okay? Which means I can look down this way or this way. But if I'm back here, I can't look over that top of the spine. And the way you determine that is if I'm tracing from, say, here down to here, I would count the number of hexes at the same altitude level in front of me and behind me. And if there are more in front of me, I'm over the crest of the ridge and can't see. It's a little bit of weirdness, but it works very well for the layer cake. So you don't have like, these aren't plateaus and they're not constantly rising in both directions, which is sort of what, the latter case is sort of what the TSS style rules had. With the same sort of layering, they would say, well, you know, if you're at a certain height, as long as there's nothing blocking you, you can see downhill. That's not the case always. Anyway, between version 1 and version 2, certain concepts were added, like heavy cavalry, which required marking some of the counters. There are also some counters that are marked up. I don't know if I have any visible. Where the numbers on the artillery are wrong. That was caught in errata, I think even earlier than this, and fixed there. There are some counters that aren't used in the version 3. For example, and were never used again in another scenario of the Napoleonic Brigade series. This worried about corps and army supply wagons. The corps wagons would handle low ammo conditions. I don't remember how ammo started getting fixed once they got rid of the supply wagons. But this is again a CWB idea. I guess, I don't know. I don't know what the decision was to start removing that concept, but they don't show up in Marengo. I don't think they're in Aspern-Essling, but I don't remember. But there's also an army supply wagon, which is a little different. Because here we have an artillery ammunition track. And given that the game was originally written with artillery ammunition being tracked, and again, I don't think any of the later games in the series were. Marengo wasn't, none of the 3.0 are. Again, Aspern-Essling might follow this same pattern. I'm not sure. I'm going to track it. The key is you have to trace your supply with an unlimited route back to the army supply wagon. And if you can't, well, under the old rules, your artillery fire would be halved. I'm not sure that's a wise idea. I'll have to think about that a little bit. I might just provide like a -1 penalty if you don't have artillery ammo, making it a much more limited thing. And then each time you fire a shot of any size, you lose, well, each time you fire a shot of 5 guns or less, guns are organized into groups of 5, but you could do battery fire that's more than 5 guns, so you'd use multiples in that case. You subtract a point off the artillery ammo, and if that's all gone, you suffer the same penalty. The army wagon wouldn't matter anymore. And I'm gonna play around and use that. I really doubt that I'm gonna run out of ammo, but since they gave me amounts to track, I figure I'll do it. So Austerlitz is basically Napoleon's sort of greatest victory, I think. It's certainly the one that he made the biggest propaganda push about, although he was really good, kind of like Ramses II, at promoting his own victories. But you know, the words with this are that he basically had this sort of preternatural idea of how this would all work. He was in a position up here on the Pratzen Heights initially, and it's a strong position, and he was afraid the Allied armies wouldn't attack, so he fell back from it, feinting that he was too weak to hold the position. And the coalition army, Austrians and Russians, take the bait, occupy the heights, and prepare for an attack. Now, there's a little bit more French troops available at this point, coming in on the next morning, but most of his forces are actually on the board, you know, at this point. So it's not really that much of a feint. Now, some of it may not be, though, may not be obvious. These forces would not be visible even once you obtained the heights necessarily. They're kind of hidden behind this Zerland. And that may actually be kind of important to the story. But anyway, not only did Napoleon supposedly entirely predict how the enemy would attack, and was able to completely take advantage of that by basically bashing his way back up on the hill after they came down, and then cutting things off here and driving them across the frozen pond, shooting artillery at them as they crossed. But also, the coalition command was just complete disarray. There were basically 2 emperors here, Alexander and Francis of Austria. And Alexander had never fought a battle before. Francis was never militarily competent. They basically blunder around causing problems. In addition, there's no core structure, oh joy, for the coalition army, which means all kinds of annoyances. So far, you've seen this in the 2 games that I've played of the NBS, where yeah, the Allied coalition forces, whatever, are operating on kind of divisional goals everywhere, which just makes for an obnoxious number of orders to be written. And it's really hard to keep track of what's going where. Especially when the units without core structure are the ones on attack. And there's a couple of units there's a couple of games in the CWB side of things that had this same problem, and I really hate them because the beauty of the brigade series is the core orders system, and here you're using that same order system, but without all the advantages to the core system. It doesn't really work well with the concept of bolting commands down, and that's really the core of the problem. It makes the units unable, and it's especially problematic in Napoleonic warfare because not only do you need the leader to run around and rally troops, but you also need the leader to be able to lead charges. There was a lot of leading from the front at the divisional level, even at the corps level. And most especially for cav units, you absolutely need to bring your leader along. So I've kind of started fudging around with those rules and maybe not being as serious about them, as strict about them as one should, just because they create flaws in the system. There's some additional stuff you'll see where there are commands that just couldn't exist under any version of NBS rules. So this unit, Legrand's 3-4, is spread out between these 3 towns with orders to defend all of that and allowed to be spread out this way and everything. You couldn't justify this order. You couldn't write this. It's basically a picket type order, but you'll see these sometimes where it's like, patrol this road. What the fuck kind of order is that? That doesn't fit under the normal standard, and that's really what this is. It's an incredibly flexible, I don't have a lot of troops, but I can defend the entire area. And just take it that way. I won't write any orders that way, but that's what we've got. Now, like all games in these series, it has exclusive rules that came out with the original. And all of this was revamped except for the setup position in order to make it work with NBS 3. And we'll go over what these special rules are because they're kind of funky. And there's one that's really cool, but I'm not going to play with it. Okay. Let me light up. Terrain. Some of the terrain concepts have changed in the course of the game. The Sokolins Castle, and more importantly, at least at this point, up here, the Santon Redoubt, which is up there on top of a crest, are considered fortified terrain under the new set of rules. Treat as villages for movement, but not for combat purposes. A maximum of 2 gun points can fire out of each of these hexes. We talked about the layer cake. Units retreating across ponds lose all steps as stragglers. The Litawa is listed as a river over in the chart. It's actually going to be considered a tributary. They're suggesting drawing terrain in that has no effect on the map. I think not. The French have combat column. Okay. So there's 2 days. So there's 2 scenarios in this game. Well, there's more than 2. There's 2 big scenarios. One is the Austerlitz battle as it happened, which is the coalition will be sitting up on the hill, and they're allowed to write any initial orders they like, or you can follow their original plan. In the original rules, they said, well, you don't want to follow their original plan because it was horrible. It actually isn't. And they go into that here. It's got more to do with, it didn't work for other reasons. Not that it was a horrible plan. Many of them to do with the command structure, but also to do with how the army was just organized in terms of, and the fact that Kutuzov, was so disgusted by how things were going. I'm going to be playing, though, one that allows the first day where the coalition makes their way onto the Pratzen Heights and whatnot. And there shouldn't be a lot of fighting. In fact, historically, there was none during that period. When I previously played it, so I've played it solitaire once, maybe twice. I think only once. I've played it opposed once, and I actually managed to win with the coalition. I was afraid to play the French because if you lose Napoleon under the original rules, you have to give up wargaming forever. So I wasn't willing to take that risk. Yeah, it's like Dean's Godzilla rule. Okay, but the thing that I found was that the coalition can kind of trigger themselves so that they all work together and bring their forces, into a coordinated attack on the second day. And then it's actually really not hard to do with the rules, especially under 3.0. Before this, at least under 2.0, they had foot dragging rules, which said you couldn't even roll for acceptance of an order until it was within like 2 hours of when the order had to be implemented, which could be problematic because all the leadership values are really shitty for the coalition. Okay, but let's keep taking a look here. All right, so between 6 and 9:30 a.m., and it's going to start at 10, but on the second day we're going to have this. There's fog, which has a visibility range listed on it. You can't see or shoot further than the distance. Cavalry charges and countercharges can only be done against targets that the cav can see. On 9 and 9:30, it only affects line of sight when at least one of the units is below level 5, because fog clings lower. Visibility is unlimited higher than that. These turns have their visibility in parentheses. Okay, to thicken the fog, let a couple of units set up hidden, notated on paper. Well, that's not going to make sense, but we may consider the hidden rules, because they're saying here you really want to use the concealed forces rules under the new set. I kind of don't like the concealed forces rules under the new set. I preferred them under the old set, and I was never willing to play them either. The Cossack unit, let's see if I remember this, can only charge, including reaction charge, against target stacks that are disorganized or routed. If it's targeted by a cav charge, it retreats 6 hexes, becomes blown, and the charging unit is not blown but can't move further or charge again this phase, except for reaction charges. Okay. The French are allowed to move up to 1 division from each corps detached and attached to another corps. Any French brigade or division may be given independent orders. All cav units may be detached and assigned to the cav corps. But it's more interesting than that, because some of the corps have independent brigades with no divisional affiliations. Both these brigades trace all command radii directly to their parent corps headquarters. They don't count for corps attack stoppage. French Imperial Guard is an independent division commanded by Bessier. For wreckage and stopping, treated as if it has 2 divisions, infantry and cav. In the original, you were allowed to put any marshal in command if you got Napoleon killed. Of course, you had to give up wargaming. But if he's wounded or killed in this, they suggest you'd probably have Berthier or Soule in charge. I gotta swap batteries. Okay, after brewing some tea as well. The Allied special rules. So their command rules are an absolute mess. Alexander and Franz can never affect a unit from the other guy's nation. Each emperor's command and initiative rating is 0, but they have a 4 morale bonus, whatever, which really doesn't matter. I guess they do in combat too, but that would be an unwise choice. The 2 emperors can use initiative to issue orders to units of their own nationality. These are free rolls for initiative, but they're issuing orders at their 0 rating. So they have to make an initiative check on the initiative table which means on a 66 they succeed. On 11 through 14 they go loose cannon, which means the other guy gets to write you orders. Not a great choice, but you may want to do it now and then. And then that order still has to be accepted by the subordinate. Okay, Kutuzov's nominally in command of the Allied army, and only he can issue orders to any unit. Whatever. All right, the corps commanders have special rules. Buxhowden is nominally in command of the left wing. He automatically commands whatever portion of the left wing he's currently stacked with. He can change each command phase based on which column he's stacked with. He can only command one of the columns at any one time, but he must command the one he's stacked with, and he must stack with one of them every turn. These may have changed a little bit. I know this one did. When he's in command of one of his columns, he supersedes the actual commander for order reception, initiative, attack, stoppage, and command radius purposes. Both commanders can still rally and lead troops. Buxhowden can make free initiative rolls each turn, which doesn't negate the ability of other commanders in his wing to check, except whoever he's supplanted, who really has no command at all. A loose cannon for Buxhowden only affects the division he's with. So basically, he wanders back and forth, replacing the command of his left wing. Now, of different divisions in the left wing. Now, if we take a look at Buxhowden, find him here. That's Doktorov, that's Langerov. Both so-so commanders. I'm looking for Buxhowden. There he is. For some reason, they made him Austrian. But he is a worse commander. Okay? The key here is you put Buxhowden goes and commands one of those columns and makes it inherently worse. They've got good commanders, solid professionals, but he goes in there and just makes them lousy. They can still use the better leaders for morale effects for the units. Kolarath and Milidorovich are over here. Now, under the original, I think Kolarath was giving command to that force, but no one seems to be sure who was in command of the fourth column, or was it the center wing? Identical orders are sent to Kolarath and Milidorovich, but they accept them and deal with them separately. So each of them is in command of a force, but you're giving the orders to that force at once, and there's nobody overriding it or whatever, and that can really break things. Kolarath really sucks. Milidorovich ain't much better. Bagration is in charge of the right wing, which is just a division, basically. A big division. He has a command radius of 8 movement points, though. For wreck formation, core attack stoppage purposes, treat the infantry and cav brigade as separate divisions. Liechtenstein is in charge of all the cav as though they're a division. Acting army commanders. If Kutuzov becomes a casualty, you go down to the Royals first, and then... if Kaiser Franz takes command, all order acceptance calculations have a -2 table shifts applied, and all Allied initiative rolls suffer a -2. Not sure what that -2 means on the current initiative table. I think the original one did not use 11 to 66 dice. They can't attach or detach. Any Allied brigade, though, can be given an independent order. The Allied player moves first. The victory conditions in this are just losses, and that was always the case. There's no terrain conditions. Pretty even victory chart. They mark the heavy cav. I have these, hopefully correctly. French skirmishers are elite. The few coalition skirmishers are normal. Okay. I have a bunch of leaders who are marked as fighters. So I think version 2.0 added the fighter concept already. but they list only 3 who are, because you're either 2 or better or you're not. But I've got leaders who are 2s who are marked with the F on them. I think they got a bonus in their command, but the new rules don't really deal with how good your commander is as a leader, and I'm fine with that. I mean, you either get a bonus or you don't. That's okay with me. I don't really. It's hard to believe. There are a few characters in the period, but for the most part, it's like, did you inspire your troops or not? We got specific random events for this, split between the 2 nations. This is in the series rules, but I'm glad to see it here. And the base scenario is supposed to start on the 2nd. And they wrote the rules for this and say there can only be 1. I'm going to play with the old scenario orders. I don't know if these have changed. Yeah, they say G5. So I've gone with the old ones. These are not the same. I don't know if they made. Wow. I don't know if they made a significant reinvestigate. Oh, no. This is December 2nd. Yeah, we're fine with that. Okay, so I'm playing with the old December 1st starting condition. But here's the thing. Under this set, there's this Weyrother option, which is so cool that I have to discuss it at least a little bit. So the idea with this is the Allied player for the 2nd day writes all their orders. There's no army headquarters. Kutuzov's a 3. He's a 0 in the base game unless he wakes up. As soon as the scenario starts, Weyrother is out of the game. So the idea here is he has written down the entire plan and hands it out, but it's all written in German and not all the commanders understand German. And basically you have no one who can write further orders. Kutuzov has completely given up. He's just wandering around as a 3 leader. We'll see what that means. All Allied commanders can roll for initiative as normally. If they get a loose cannon, that's just as it would be. Furthermore, the Allied player must roll for initiative each turn for at least 2 of the following commanders: Kutuzov, Alexander, Franz, and Buxhausen. And you can't choose the same 2 commanders in 2 consecutive turns, and no commander can roll for initiative 3 turns in a row. The Allied player may not roll for a commander who's left the map. They can move about as they please. Buxhausen and Franz have certain limitations. Now they give discussions of each of the characters, and they give kind of a mocking discussion of the character of these leaders. You know, like Kutuzov was normally a solid and ruthless general, known among other things for his taste in young women and reading French porn. Also the fact that he managed to survive 2 shots through his head during his career. But for the actual effects, he can roll for initiative. If he succeeds, then he gets to issue an order by writing it and rolling and whatnot. If he fails, he goes on as above, looking depressed. If he gets a loose cannon, he sulks, turns to a 0, but soldiers on. A new loose cannon will reverse that result. Buxhausen, typical Russian brute, fond of whores and dogs, who went to war with a 139-man household in tow. If he rolls for initiative, he can issue an order. If he fails, he goes on above, terrorizing his subordinates. If he gets a loose cannon, he feels he needs a rest and goes to the nearest town and village to get drunk. Franz, When he rolls for initiative, he may issue an order to an Austrian division. If he fails, he goes around looking out of it. If he gets a loose cannon, his courtiers have convinced him about the need for safety, and he withdraws to the nearest town or village that's out of sight of all French troops. And then he has to roll initiative or a loose cannon. To change that, he can never be within range of French artillery, even when... And Alexander, with a somewhat loose hold on reality. When Alexander gets initiative, he can issue an order to any Russian division in the army. If he fails, he goes on as above, looking both excited and terrified. If he gets a loose cannon, the French may write the order Alexander sends to any Allied division on the map. The order is handled as any other, and its contents are not revealed to the Allied player before it's accepted. Handled as any other order, I think what that means is the orders that he writes as a loose cannon aren't going to be affected by loose cannon. Like, the ally has to continue following them. What about Kutuzov? Yeah, Kutuzov doesn't, like, if he loose cannons, he just gets depressive. But Alexander can actually affect things with his loose cannon. So I rather like, I really like that, and I could see implementing it. Unfortunately, I want to play the first day and the positioning, which I'm going to use under the original rules, and then I'm going to make some kind of decision on whether or not I want to try to fit Wehrother into this. Now, what is up with the Austrian forces? Because here, they're set up normally. Well, under the original rules, and that's what we're playing with for this, I think they didn't want to do this. You know, I'm not sure why. But the way the Austrians are going to play is they write down an entry time and an entry area and time of arrival for each of their columns. There's some restrictions on that. They have to put like at least an hour between each unit, and the units aren't guaranteed to arrive, etc. Beginning when the first scheduled arrival has occurred, you roll to see if those reinforcements arrive. If it's successful, it comes that turn. Otherwise, it's delayed. No one else can come in through the same entry area if there's somebody blocking that area. And anyway, it allows the Allies to kind of trickle in, which might give the French an option for some sort of special attack, you know, if the Allies don't deploy very rapidly. If they do deploy rapidly, they could try to take the battle to the French during this first day. Or, as is much more likely, it takes them the whole fucking day to get themselves up on the hill and organized. And it's almost nighttime, and you say, okay, I'm going to start writing my orders for the next day. And that start writing orders for the next day, I'm very intrigued with playing with the Wehrother options in full effect for that next day. That is when Kutuzov blew his stack, basically, and said, I'm not interested in this battle anymore. This is just ridiculous. And so, yeah, that's why you basically have no one in command on the next day. And I find that really intriguing. That will cut down on the number of Allied orders that I end up writing, which is also appealing. But yeah, I have to figure out and program all those early turn. And I also write the orders for those units as to what they're going to do all ahead of time. So conceivably, I could count on chance and just roll across the board at the beginning. I think that's a really, really bad idea. That's an easy way to be destroyed piecemeal. Of course, no matter what, I think this scenario is built. Well, the Austerlitz battle as a whole is built to like let the French destroy the Austrians in piecemeal. However, when I played it solitaire and when I played it opposed, both times I was able to get fairly coordinated starts to my attacks. And that's what you would get if you played with this, I believe. No, they've written out initial orders for Son of Austerlitz. The original Son of Austerlitz also writes out the orders for them. Yeah. So I mean, the biggie is, can you get a coordinated set of orders that all trigger at once and that will launch you into attacks against the French? And I think the answer is, so far, yes. But under those original rules, you could get yourself into a mess. And what I think I might do is have sort of the order acceptance situation for that first day. And part of the problem was the orders were incredibly complicated. They tried to map out the entire next day of battle, not leaving any discretion, and that's part of why Kutuzov said, screw this, man. Fine, just follow him, whatever. But yeah, and I think that would be part of my goal, is to write orders that cover the entirety of that first day. I didn't do that in the games that I played. What I did instead was more what I generally do. And quite honestly, the French are able to put up enough of a fight and don't end up pulling back from those fights that there wasn't a lot of room for me to be issuing new orders. It really came down to, once corps attack stoppage happened, I'm screwed. I'm not going to get these divisions running again at that point. But I actually made quite a bit of ground up in this area in the opposed game. That's the only one I really remember. I'm trying to figure out my strategy for the coalition forces to come in. First of all, entry area A and E have a penalty to their chance of making it on the board when they first get a chance to, which is somewhat disturbing. Basically, I can bring it in A, B, D, E. I don't know where C is. It may be under the map or something. Anyway, area A and B have this additional advantage, though, of being really close to each other. So I can bring forces in from here and count on getting a fair amount of force on the board at once. D is obviously going to be my most effective place to bring troops in, probably, and that gives me some advantages. Now, I start to worry now about, well, what am I, how am I arranging things? What am I doing? How much freedom do I want to allow myself, essentially? Because my most effective force is probably Bagration, who's my right wing. Well, you'd want the right wing to come in on the right? And if that's what you're doing, you're deploying your strongest forces, and then with B coming in as well, you're deploying against where the strength of the French army really actually is. So the questions I have in my head are, how much do I feel limited by, left, right, center? And how much do I feel limited by the coalition decision to occupy the heights that the French have just fallen back from. It's clearly advantageous to be able to fall back on the heights, or to take them and just sit there, perhaps, because, hey, there's nothing in these victory conditions that says I have to attack or the other guy has to attack, right? So, looking at the situation, if I were to devise, and I'm breaking myself trying to think of this, but if I were to devise an attack strategy, I think what I'd do is I'd put my strongest force, that right wing, coming in this way, with orders perhaps to roll all the way up. Now, how much do I know about the French situation at this point? Well, this is where you really should be using hidden movement, but the deployment is fixed, man. The French initial deployment is fixed. And I probably have scouts and whatnot. So, at the very least, I know about this. And I also know that there's more French troops coming, that the French aren't as weak as they seem to be. You know, and again, that's maybe a reason just to park myself up here. And I know when I played solo, the French moved up and took the Kirchfeld back. Because why not? Why not? You know, why follow Napoleon's plan? Napoleon's plan is horrible, right? It really is. If you're going to fight a battle here, screw it. Let me take that high ground. Let me have that advantage. And, you know, there's nothing positionally or anything, no roads you have to protect, except that, you know, Davout comes in eventually on where? Anywhere along the west edge of map B, just down here. Okay, well, my feeling, is either throw myself up there and just fucking squat on the hill and say, ha ha, you shouldn't have left, or come sweeping down this way. Neither of which is the Austrian and Russian plan. And this is where things feel so problematic to me. Yeah. Now, if I wanted to do it historically, and there's some pull in that direction, I'd bring the right wing here, I'd bring the center wing, and I think this is what I've always done. I'd bring the center wing in more here. E, I think, has a -2. That just feels too painful. I might have sent something like the left wing there, but I didn't send the advance guard left there. Just because it would be quicker to pull in this way. I'm at a loss as to what I want to do, so I'm probably going to roll a die. Yeah. So here's what I'm going to face with this. On odd, I'm going to deploy the way I usually would, which is a more, and I've had success with that, which is a more historical, deploy up onto the heights and make a decision based on that. And I might mutate around the edges to try to take some of this territory. On an even roll, I'm going to launch more this way, maybe rotate my army so that the right wing's on the left, just because it's just the more effective force, the one that I'm going to have more flexibility with, and try to pin the French up here by moving forces up to the Kirchfeld, right? In fact, screw it. This is what I want to do. Because I don't want to roll. I've done the right to left correctly every other time, and advancing to the heights and just positioning myself for a nighttime advance. I'm going to try launching a fair-sized force up this way to get a flanking power up this way. Now, I've got to watch out because Davout comes in tomorrow, and try to use my less effective forces here as kind of a pinning force, just to make sure that the French don't come sweeping down across the heights. I do want to make sure that I get some forces up here. Totally different plan. We might find out that this, what's his name? I can't remember, Roclaw or whatever, is completely Weyrather is completely unavailable to be used. But for the first day, I wouldn't be using it anyway, because the first day is that deployment, and yeah. But I'm with all the problems of a not very useful Kutuzov, a not the problems of the emperors and all that. That's all still stuck with me. The only question is, and honestly, that stuff stuck with you to prevent you from making these kind of bold moves right on the first day, and instead getting you up on the hills. But I don't want to do that this time. There's one more change in plans, but then I realized C is actually in that list. It's supposed to be this entry hex. It just isn't written on the map. A, B, C, D, E, which means I have faster flow than I thought I was. I was having problems balancing everything. So I'm going to start rebalancing. Although the right wing is more flexible and maneuverable, the left wing has all the force. So my plans changed. I've decided to keep the center right, the right center left orientation that you would have. Here's what's happening. First of all, I'm using all my entry hexes. I don't usually use this one because that -2 is too painful. So to open things up, Bagration is coming in on B. I want to get things covered as quickly as possible. He's going to try to cover the Kirchfeld up there, the hill line there. The intention is to avoid getting shelled, though. So he's only there to prevent the French from advancing and screwing with things. However, he's got complex orders. I can write whatever orders I want, and they're accepted. That's the way this scenario is written, essentially. So I've written complex orders that say, hey, if the French abandon Sandlin Hill or whatever, for whatever reason, go occupy it. Just so I don't have to roll for initiative in this highly unlikely case. Otherwise, though, they're just standing there to hold the line. Okay. Coming in for the center, well, I've also got, okay, so this gets weird. The center core, or wing, is meant to hold here. Again, largely a holding action. So I've given Milidorovich, who's coming in on C, orders to move up to the Stare Vinohrady, and Kolerat has to have the same orders as far as I can tell. Otherwise things will, but there's nothing about him having to enter at the same place. So he's going to enter on A at -1. Okay. The advanced guard left, and this is the most likely to come forward, is coming in on D. It's going to move up to the Ajust market, and then it also has complex orders. Basically, wait until something gets within 6 hexes of it, another part of the left wing, and then advance to attack Solnitz and Telnitz, I think. Yeah, and then advance on the west side here to come behind once there's an attack on Puntowitz. Puntowitz is my ultimate goal for the left wing. And everything else is largely on standing orders. But you'll see this gets more complicated still. These are the most complicated initial orders I've ever written. Langeron, also left wing, is coming in here. He's got orders to swing up, take Telnitz, Solkonitz, Koblenz, and attack Puntowitz. Okay. That's all my 10 a.m. checks. Now, oh, this is a unit. I have trouble telling units from commanders. There's no good reason. The commanders have a big star on them. But I'm just like, the units don't look like the units do now and whatever. Okay, so for 11 a.m., assuming everything comes in at 10, otherwise it's going to be delayed further, but we're planning on this. The Guard and Alexander, Francis is coming in and Kutuzov is coming in. They're going with the center. The Guard is coming in with Alexander because, you know, they got to guard him. But they're coming in on A, which means penalties. Their orders are to position themselves above Blaswitz. Again, just a defensive posture. And I may end up throwing myself into no orders after I move there, keeping them in reserve. It all depends on what the French are doing. I don't have to specify that ahead of time. Okay, the Cav is coming in on B at 11. It's got weird orders. It's going to move between Stare and Pratzen, but once an attack on Puntowitz begins, they're going to move down into the valley and then support the left corps. Because there's no Cav here, but there's Cav up there, and I want to make sure that I can deal with it. And infantry attacking Cav without Cav support is dangerous. Okay, and then we get to the last parts of the left corps. Is coming in on C with Buxhowden. His orders, number C is down here, is to simply march across through Pratzen and up into Puntowitz. Hi-ho, right up the middle. And then Doctorow has orders coming in on D to swing through here, up and over. Again, this gives me some coverage. If E takes too long to come in, D will come up and back up and the AGL will start moving forward. But the AGL might end up supporting, you know, the attack that E is making instead. So this gives me a lot of flexibility in terms of like, hey, the die rolls might work out well. Whew. I don't know if I have time to start today. It's dancing night. I got to poop. But it's not like a hell of a lot happens. Oh, so the counters from this are significantly different. And let's take a look. So first of all, I'm fine with this. It gives you information, but what it doesn't give you is it doesn't give you the size information nor the morale. That's all on the back, and this is like old CWB style. And the back just has a flag. The back's not meant to be column. Column was represented by these guys. I don't know whether or not I want to use them. We also have low ammo markers. Those don't exist anymore in the system. Low ammo, I think we had them in Marengo as well. But low ammo is why we have all these little wagons so that we can fill the ammo. I don't remember whether there was some kind of solution that got rid of the wagons, the supply wagons, because I don't remember seeing any in Marengo. But it may just be Marengo had special rules to eliminate low ammo. I don't recall seeing that either though, so I don't know. All right. A couple of fun things. I got two of my columns coming in. Kolerath, who's moving to the center, and Bagration, who's moving up here. and that's it. Everybody else pushes on. The Cossack unit appears to be this thing. There's nothing to distinguish it as a Cossack except it's listed as such here, and it's got a D morale. That's going to be hard to note. I may want to mark it with something, but I don't know. I also noticed as I started to look, you got primary roads and secondary roads. And under the current rules, there's a significant difference between road, which is listed as primary road, and track, which is listed as secondary road. You can see artillery is faster on the one. Cavalry expends a great deal of movement on the secondary. If the movement rates have been changed, but the secondary road, well, tracks are listed as secondary road here, but the secondary road on the original rules, they had exactly the same movement rates. There may have been some difference regarding exactly the same, and they were better. So like half movement for infantry and whatnot. Now, it's possible that the road movement rule, which of course there's no notation for, covers something that I'm not paying attention to, but I think it just covers the facing changes. Yeah, it just covers facing changes. So, the ability to deploy across wide areas has been reduced. I could show you the old chart. And I kind of trust the newer version more. It feels like they're more in keeping with Napoleonic realities. But if we take a look here, the way the chart is organized is different, but you have primary and secondary road. You can see they have exactly the same movement rates going down the line, and artillery is half on both, and leaders and headquarters are half. And you have the headquarters and leaders, but artillery is only half on the primary road. It's probably fitting, but you got kind of the question of, well, just, how good are these roads? Are they problematic roads or not? I mean, I would actually assume that the roads in the American West were in worse condition in 1860 than the European road network would have been in the Napoleonic era. Life is a little weird right now. I went dancing, but if you've been following my stuff, I'm totally unhinged in terms of like any kind of link to regular daytime situation. And it's gotten to the point, because of some computer issues, I had a power outage, and that fucked my BIOS up. And only because I have a secondary computer was able to figure out how to fucking fix it. Always have a secondary computer, but I have others. I have a laptop and a tablet and whatnot, but not all of them work. So I can't really guarantee that I'd be able to get into them and access the internet properly, but this one I'm lucky to have. But anyhow, I woke up at like 10 a.m., which is crazy, or 10:30 or something. Why it's crazy is that's like 5 hours of sleep after I get home. But then I went back to bed as soon as I got the issue resolved, which took me probably an hour and a half, and real panic. And basically, I've gotten to the point where I'm not awake during any daylight hours, it seems. That's painful because it's summertime and the daylight hours are the longer portion, just to show you some of the level of the depression and whatnot. And it's not just unique to yesterday. Friday I woke up, I don't know, it was like 4, you know. The day before I woke up at 5. It's just horrible. Those are the 2 commands that came on and where they're going. Color F's heading this way, Bagration's heading this way. We're getting sort of a traffic jam situation, which sucks. That's going to be a little problematic, but not that bad because I can go off-road and then switch to road. It isn't really going to hurt anything, although there may be a slope there. The question that comes up for the French, then, put them up next, is, hey, do I want to do something about this? Do I want to negate Napoleon's grand scheme, which I think is asinine, to tell you the truth? But it's a clever idea, a ruse to bring the coalition on the board. But once they're fighting the battle here, once they're coming on the board, they're sort of screw it, man, I should be up on the Highlands. Of course, the question there is, this is pretty defensible, and some of that other terrain maybe is less so. So maybe I'll try to hold this line, which is, trying to build a defense up here doesn't make a lot of sense. But with this whole area undefended, apparently, it might be worth rolling for initiative and or finding Napoleon. There's got to be somewhere around here. I don't know where the fuck I put him. Here he is. It's not my doing that he's there. I actually think that the army headquarters work the same in this system as they used to. I don't think you can move them freely. I think you had to issue them in order to move them, but they only matter for recharging yourself when you're running off and giving in-person orders. That may have been different at some point, though, so I'm not positive. I don't recall, but I vaguely do remember having to issue orders to the armies to move them, even though they didn't make any difference. Where there is an army headquarters that doesn't mean a damn thing is in Terrible Swift Sword. But honestly, in a way, the Corps headquarters kind of don't mean anything either. So, French side of the turn, and there are potential problems with this. I issued some orders. Now, it's kind of weird. I'm used to being able to fling out a bunch of orders under the old designs where you had type method force. So somebody like Napoleon could issue maybe low force orders or whatever. But here you have 16 command points. If you're writing, well, you could do oral. If you're writing written engage orders, you only get one of them out. I could do a pair of oral engages. I chose just to write one order, but when you're only writing one order, it almost seems like you should run down, talk to the guy in person, run back, especially if the ranges aren't too far. Here the ranges are far enough and the values are high enough that I'm going to fire off orders to both him and then to the Cav. But I made an initiative roll for Sewell. That did not take place. No harm in it. I have forgotten to roll random events for the first turn of the game. Oops. I don't remember what the number is on them. Gotta look that up. I mean, just, that's something new in the version 3.0. Yes, they played around with it a little bit back with CWB. So, what is it, on a 1? Start of each player turn? Yeah. I can roll it for the French. Let's roll for each. just to set my mind at ease. Return, no additional reinforcements for the coalition forces, so they start to deploy. Traffic jam over. For the French, I get initiative with Soule, and Bernadotte is following his orders. Murat has not yet received his. He'll get him in the next turn. And we're moving in force up into here, and that's going to cause some serious problems. This is not going to play out like Austerlitz did. Every other time I've played it, I gave the coalition a chance to deploy. That actually worked pretty well for the coalition in those times. Now I'm saying, screw that, man. I'm going to move right up. Now, of course, the question is, would the coalition fall back if they see the French army moving up here? I don't know. The feint and then moving forward might be sufficient to pull them into the battle, and I guess that's the world we're playing in. For the reinforcements, I've got everybody stacked up here. The couple of units, the couple of entry hexes that I've already entered in are stacked in here. The other entry hexes that are backed up, I'm pushing forward. And we'll see how that all works out. And look, it's got to be time for this vampire to be curling up and sleeping soon now. Yeah, as soon as Lucifer rises, you know. Both no new forces coming on. The French starting to make their way up to Stary. Yeah. Honestly, when I played this opposed, this was my biggest worry, was what if the French attack right away? What if they attack as I'm coming in piecemeal? And I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out. Because, okay, I did take a little bit of a risk with this southern strategy that is going to further make this worse. But both sides are taking a more aggressive position than I've seen before. When I played it solo, I let the coalition develop its forces, figuring, you know, I got a big unit coming in on the day of the actual battle. Screw it, this is what we should do. Well, in terms of the French, I'm not really convinced of that at all. I think their best move is jump back on the hill, take that defensive position, and throw the coalition forces back that are going to be entering in disarray. For the coalition taking this kind of more aggressive stance, yeah, I don't buy it. But I wanted to try it. I just wasn't sure whether or not the French were going to do this. But, you know, my heart said to me, this is the way the French win this game in the easiest fashion. And we'll see. Right, on the coalition turn, they got Milodorovich's forces coming in, part of the center, operate under one command. But Soule is beginning to deploy up here. That's looking ugly. And the Cav is reacting and moving forward as well. And at this point, I may start to consider launching an attack up here on the Kirchfeld as well. Not sure. Not sure yet. But I've deployed skirmishers on both sides. You know, if I wanted to go up there, I should have done it already, right? Should have been sort of right off the bat strike up there. But this, you know, a French corps looks stronger than this force here combined. And I got another French corps heading up there, and the Cav corps. I think the coalition is just going to get its ass handed to it. And again, I'm not playing Austerlitz here. You know, the strategy that both sides have taken is far more aggressive. But I really think that this is the scariest thing that the French can do in this game, is bring the fight on right away. Wasted the day, but I didn't sleep it, trying to gain control over things, which might be foolish because Monday's supposed to be hot. Played out the, I've been watching a lot of old baseball footage, actually, and learned some things about how the game's changed in the last couple of years that I really don't like. But the guard under Constantine, along with Alexander, has come in. They've got orders to come up here. I do have Kutuzov up here, for whatever that's worth. No special rules in effect here. If I end up with a complex second day plan, I may incorporate those rules. But the fact that the battle's developing, I don't think I will. But outside the game, the fact that, like, I'm trying to stay awake all day, and now it's dark and I can go to sleep. Maybe means, you know, I haven't been playing much because I'm fucking dead tired, but I wanted to get a little bit more in for whatever reason. I don't particularly want to start with the French because there's the question of the engagement here, and there's a question of, does Napoleon want to issue different orders than I've got in play right now? Because I've got 2 corps heading up this way. Things are starting to get more crowded, where maybe I'll be outnumbered if I stay up on the heights and I'm not careful. So first blood occurs here. Von Damme slams in right into Milodorovic at the lead. Skirmisher advantage, commander advantage, all kinds of things. I end up winning the battle, you know, the close combat result, which means I'm rolling on a better table, but that doesn't guarantee anything. And better die rolling caused the French to take a 3-4M-1 loss, where the Russians only took a 2-5. So more permanent losses. I gotta record these, I forget. You don't really have to, but fuck. It helps me keep an idea of what the relative losses are that we're seeing before I start throwing units into the counter tray. You know, back when I was doing VLE, Viva l'Empereur, the Leipzig scenario, you know, which had combat charts that are bigger than these, actually. You know, these are awfully tiny print. Is the Allied loss chart double-sided? No. Okay. I thought I had double-sided ones for this. The best way for me to tell what was happening was what units are destroyed. But honestly, that's more important in that game because it doesn't have stragglers tracked separately. So, like, units that aren't destroyed can always recover completely. Whereas in this, you got actual casualties, you got stragglers. But, you know, a quick glance at this can show you a lot, but there'll be a lot of units on the board that are pretty beaten up, and it's not clear, you know, that they've been weakened or whatever. Anyway, nothing exciting other than that we started seeing some blood, and this is going to be an ugly situation for the coalition. There's no question about it. I absolutely was terrified that my French opponent would do this. The first time when I played, I don't know how many times I played it solo. Whenever I played it solo, I played it, you know, by the book. And when I played as the coalition, I played it by the book as well, as did my opponent. And, you know, positioning myself on the heights, then launching an attack on the next day. But I have this scenario and wanted to try it out a little bit more with my nightmare situation for the coalition. Mainly because the coalition did too well. the couple of times that 2 to 3 times that I've played this, I got way too good a result for them. It was not, Napoleon blowout. And I think it might be in this situation. And for the coalition, I fall back, throw my artillery up. That's going to be some pain for the French, I guess, and try to hold the line as best as I can. I've got enough tactical flexibility. I can do what I did, falling back a hex and whatnot. I got a morale check on that. I can't use Francis to help that because he sucks. The guard has moved forward a little bit, and Kutuzov is going up there to give them some orders. But this does not look pleasant. One of the problems is, there's a possibility that any corps could just throw itself into a corps attack stoppage. And unlike corps attack stoppage, it's not just I slow down or whatever. It's you run away. And that makes sense once you've taken fire, but it makes so little sense when you haven't taken fire. And this version 3.0, by this point, corps attack stoppage happens even before you've taken any fire. There's no discriminant in it. There used to be, pretty damn sure, something that said you didn't have to start checking until you took fire. And even then, it's kind of iffy. Like, if you defeat the enemy or the enemy runs away, you're probably not going to be fleeing backwards and losing all kind of stragglers and everything. Your forward assault just sort of stops, but yeah. It's always been kind of an iffy thing. I would much prefer something along the lines of, okay, your attack stops and you have to get out of enemy fire. Breaking or routing feels like a worse situation, something that honestly, the attack stoppage kind of tries to reflect by taking into account how many units in your command are broken, but when there's a 1 in 36 chance that your unit could just run away for no reason, no matter what, no matter how well led, what quality troops they are, boom. Yeah, it's one of the weaknesses. I'm having trouble because I know I don't want to do the next French turn, because that's going to be kind of active. But how much can I drag my feet? Pretty much. This is me. I'm at stupid o'clock in the morning again. My sleep, I've been catching like an hour or two here, an hour or two there. And again, it's just what happens when I become unhinged time-wise. I've got a problem for the French. I can't stand here. The coalition has unleashed some artillery. I have like one gun trailing back here from the 4th Corps. That's it. Which kind of surprised me. I figured it would have more, but it appears not to have as much as it should. Oh, I know why. I've got a gun attached over here. Yeah. So I'm a little short on artillery. I have, the skirmisher advantage, but that's okay if you're not outgunned with the artillery. But when you're outgunned with the artillery, the skirmishers are going to melt. So I think I have to just keep plowing forward right into those guns. Now comes some of the tricky stuff, because of course it's Napoleonics. So I've got like this cav unit. Now this system isn't friendly to cav attacks. Unlike the Vive l'Empereur, where you can pretty much blow your cav and get it out of any dangerous charge that it's about, that it's incurring. Here, there's some real risk to going forward. And cav is a crapshoot. This is not a really high quality cav unit. It's a C morale I don't want to chance it. So I think I'm going to go in with a full-on infantry charge, take those guns, and deal with the worst. And after movement and the opportunity, fire from the artillery as you enter the hex. That worst is not good. This unit got really chewed up, a couple of bad results. I don't remember which guy it is, but he ended up getting, this was on the 5 table, he ended up getting like 3 hits, 2 straggles. Would have been 4 morale losses, but I threw Von Damme in there, so, and he didn't die, luckily. But yeah, now, defensive fire, I don't see any. Offensive fire, I didn't get any. Guns aren't up there. I did screw up and forgot to roll this guy's recovery, and I forgot to do, even before that, the French recovery. They were just shaken. They were not disordered in the fight, so they should have recovered already. I'm a little slow picking the system back up again, you know, especially with the disjointed. But on to the 3 melees, just trying to break the line here. That charge did not go well for the French. First of all, actually, that shaken unit probably should have been shaken. I screwed up. Remember, the coalition fell back. I wouldn't have gotten the rally phase. I would have been adjacent. So anyway, I was thrown back in all my attacks, and 1 unit routed. Losses now are standing at 11-6 for actual casualties. We got a wrecked unit back here. It's just not good. No leader losses yet. That's going to put us on the coalition for the 1 p.m. turn. You can see, though, we're almost done with the day. It's got to be late in the year, huh? What is it? Yeah, December. Yeah. I knew Austerlitz was late in the year. I didn't realize it was in December. Okay. Because, yeah, Napoleon's movement, I think, against Mac starts in August, but I mean, he's pulling off the off the English Channel at that point to march. Yeah. So that's one thing. This will be a quicker battle because the 2 days worth isn't a lot. And that explains why the ponds are frozen, right? Just didn't really sink into my head how late in the year it would have to be. Right then, a fair chunk of sleep and a reasonable time to be awake. Maybe I'll hit something a little bit more normal. All right, the coalition side, no new troops came in. Kutuzov issued orders. I gotta move his ass back here to recharge. Forgot to do that, moved him along with. But new orders issued, not accepted, but an emergency withdrawal happened on them. This almost makes sense. You know, you see the enemy, and you've got new orders, and it's like, fall back, let's reorganize. I don't mind, you know, how the story's coming out here. There are some times when, in general, I don't like how the system works with this kind of thing. But in this case, it makes perfect sense. And in a lot of cases, it does, because you're attacking the enemy. You know, falling back makes sense in a lot of cases. Up here, we're still in attack mode. We can't slip into a defense automatically or anything. A leader could do that. So we're making checks. The advantage is we got pre-fire, so we were able to unload our artillery, routed another French unit, took some fire from the skirmishers though. But the big tale right now is we are not getting additional reinforcements, and we really kind of need them. And these guys are on like a D4, I think, which isn't too bad. I hope it's a D4. D5, pity. The French continue to plow in. First Corps making its way up into oh no, up here into place. This is the cav protecting against the guard coming forward, I guess. Again, not great results. We had some routes falling back, but who is this? St. Hilaire? No. Sewell himself led an attack which nearly disintegrated a big-ass unit. I don't remember what the losses were, like 3 permanent losses and 10 stragglers. The charts are just so different from, you know, what you saw off the old system. But yeah, I mean, just smash that unit, a D quality unit, flying back, and making it harder and harder for what's standing here. That's part of Milodorovich there. The center is not standing up. I still have a couple of units here. We can keep trying to fall back or something, but we've got artillery here, which causes issues. Disintegrated a full skirmisher unit, though, of the French, which will help. That's probably the French's, one of their biggest advantage, is that they have tons and tons of skirmishers, and the coalition really does not. Artillery-wise, the Russians bring so many guns to the field that I think we're outnumbered, actually. I'm having trouble keeping track of these losses. They don't really matter. I can count them up at the end of the game for the actual score. This is a best guess. Still about 2-1. But I know I fucked up. So the French won a battle where I think they took more physical casualties than the coalition did, and that's not supposed to be allowable. There's going to be plenty of little screw-ups like that, because there's things like that, you know, the old system, again, it was intuitive. This system contains a lot of good stuff in it, but some of it's special case like rules like that. You're not going to usually see that kind of situation because you're rolling on, you know, these differential charts, and usually the attacker's not going to take a lot more damage than, well, usually the winner's not going to take a lot more damage than the loser. But I think I may be like a strength point too many that I caused. It's only on real casualties, though. The hard casualties doesn't count for stragglers. So it's quite possible you could lose a lot of stragglers. But yeah. And then, you know, I got to count in the artillery losses too, which don't factor into that. So that may have been what I'm thinking is, oh geez, I lost a lot on the artillery. But I know that I got like a really bad roll combination where, you know, I lost like one here. I lost like one strength point. You can see crappy morale units actually take less physical casualties and more stragglers. Whereas at higher strength, you'll be taking more physical casualties. You know, on even the same die rolls, here we have 2 physical casualties, here we have 1. Well, I could have gotten something, and I think I did, where the attacker took like 2 casualties and the defender took 1 on that chart. That's probably about as bad as I got, you know. So it throws it back to the coalition turn. You know, I'm convinced that my sleeping habits have to do with an avoidance situation. I feel like, oh, if I'm up all night, there's nothing you can do at night, right? You know? Whereas I could be going to the bank to deal with some stuff there. I could, you know, there's stuff that I could deal with via email or electronically that I can do at night too, but somehow I'm able to say, oh no, it's nighttime, I'm safe, you know, and I don't want to face the daylight. I don't know. And stress is just killing me here. Coalition ends up blinking. Kolarath's command does an emergency withdrawal. I decide that Milodorovich can't be left out where he is. So I also pulled one off. You can see this guy's kind of as far as he could get. Actually, maybe he could get this far and still cover the artillery, but not be facing the right way. Because I got no orders, so I got to get as close as I can to Milodorovic, who's actually back here. So yeah, I got to run as hard as I can. That's going to open things up. Liechtenstein's cav came in, and they're marching down, I guess going to try to evade things and get themselves up here. That's where their orders say to go. I got too much trouble trying to piece this together. So Kutuzov is there talking to Kolarath, trying to get his force together. Because, unlike under the original rules, the versions 1 and 2, when you fail an emergency withdrawal, you automatically go into no orders in this thing. Which means, let me check that, but what that means is I'm shortened distances and fragile, can't really fire back as well. I'm only allowed to fire opportunity fire, which means my artillery is hindered, and that's where my big advantage is. You're really not expected to be in the line when you have no orders. Let me make sure of that, though, that I can't just fall into defense force. Oh, and Constantine's guard is trying the best it can to to follow its orders, which I think means it kind of anchors itself down here. Got some cav to protect me on there, but yeah, things don't look too hot. Like I said, this is the nightmare scenario. We dealt a lot of damage to the French coming in, but still, this is not the scenario that the coalition wants to see. That's right. Anyway, on top of the game side of things, for the less interesting personal life stuff, I'm found a new way to do avoidance. In this case, I started playing, I only did one season of, what is it called? Baseball Mogul. I have an old version of it kicking around, and I played that. And I don't know, thinking about buying a more recent version where things aren't as nerfed as they are in that one, but I'm really most interested in, the first 50 years of baseball. So it's like, well, it starts in 1901, so, but the first 50 years of the 20th century to just like, I don't know, that's when the fun players are and everything. And after a decent amount into that, I remember this version gets really wonky, and like, you got pitchers, you got lousy pitchers who, they look like they're lousy ratings, who are like gods, and then you start getting all kind of weird stuff happening, and like batting averages drop down to like below 100, and ERAs drop down to basically zero. It's like they either never allow runs, or and I think it's a wraparound error. But anyway, I don't know if I'm gonna get totally addicted to it. I've been watching a lot of baseball shit. I'm just like, the whole avoidance thing is weird, because it's like, I just don't want to have to do any of the things that I have to do, and it gets to the point where like anything to hide from the existence of life. And playing board games works to some extent. Staying up at night works to some extent. I just go into such panic mode whenever I'm thinking about both the consequences of my avoidance, but also trying to rectify it in any way. I don't know. Move relatively slowly forward. The French push forward. throwing some skirmishers out to start causing problems, that's going to be an issue. I can fall back a little bit. I can't fall back continuously. And with the artillery in place and whatnot, I have to make a decision. Do I keep withdrawing? What's up? And where to? I don't want to get my army divided. So, if I get sent down there and part of my army's coming in there, there's this possibility of the French slamming from two directions and destroying this command. And it just, things are in a really, really ugly position right now, as far as I can tell. Again, we see what comes up, It was definitely a bad idea, though. I never have devoted units to coming in down there. It's only one column, but yeah, it may never come in. I'm getting pretty bad luck with some of the others, but I gotta tell you, I got pretty bad luck, I think, in other games of this that I've played, where, stuff just doesn't make its way onto the hill. It certainly was the case that it was dark before I was in a position, or nearly dark before I was in a position to launch any kind of attack when I played it opposed. And I suspect that was the case the other time as well. Now, I had more crowding because I didn't want to use that one. But I did use this one. And, yeah. All right. It's been a little while since I played. Full avoidance mode. Whatever. And in the interim time, the last of my interview processes ended in failure. But I'm stumped here. I don't know what to do. This horrible command structure that the coalition has, no matter how you play it, is just so troublesome. It's probably worse on the defense than the offense. The offense, you can have a lot of pieces in movement, and at least they're, well, I don't know. I was sort of in the offense here. The real thing is, do I throw these guys into some kind of defense with Kutuzov? I'm talking to the 2C right now. That's the only unit that I can talk to. Or do I want to try to pull back and defend here? I got to worry about Liechtenstein in that case. He's got orders to go do stupid stuff. I've got part of my army coming in down here. I'm really worried that I'm going to end up split if I don't defend here. On the other hand, I'm worried that the French will turn and smash into this or whatever. Will defeat me in this, sitting below the heights with absolutely nothing going in my favor. Yeah, not good, man. Not good. Of course, the only places that really matter are these slopes. How much do they matter? Yeah, I don't know. Not much. So they slow down or prevent bringing things to a close combat. Trying to find where these pages separate. But I don't think they have a damn effect on the only real fire that happens, either the fire combat, but also the check to stands here. We got something, don't we? We have attacks from higher terrain or something. No. A fortified terrain. Maybe it's here? Nope. Yeah, there's no edge. There's no good terrain in this system. So, yeah, I mean, I guess on the bright side, that means being up here isn't necessarily all that advantageous. I guess I'll try to write defend orders and sit in no order status while we wait for those to process. I'm in kind of a weird position. Remember that there were special rules for the center column. Kolarath Milodorovic. Identical orders may be sent to both. In effect, 2 orders at the cost of 1. Compute distance and acceptance accordingly. Well, if I wanted to talk to them in person, that doesn't really work. I'm going to assume Milodorovic is hanging around even though he isn't, just so that they can have the same orders. Because they shouldn't be able to have separate orders, but if I'm giving orders to Kolarath, somebody should be transmitting those to Milodorovic, right? I don't know. Kind of the defense I built up, I got the infantry here, some artillery trying to make its way up for the guards. Just, trying to create a breakwater, as it were. Got the guard cav up here. That's real iffy. The cav can countercharge, which is fine if all the French cav comes streaming in. I've got problems, but, there's life. But if French infantry marches on them, they can countercharge the infantry. The infantry still gets a chance to create a square. This is different from the Vive l'Empereur. I don't remember how this worked under the old system, but from what I can tell from this, it doesn't explicitly say much, except there's an implication that that would end the unit's movement. So they don't spend movement points for it, though, which might be... I think it's only 1 movement point to change formation, isn't it, for infantry? Yeah, so it wouldn't be that big a deal. But they get an automatic chance, or an automatic square formation, which makes the whole idea of using cav to prevent an infantry attack on the flank a lot more questionable, because as we've seen, cav doesn't often do a very good job of scaring people away. It's sort of a 50-50 crapshoot, and it might butcher the whole unit, or you might lose your cav unit, and that's that. Well, I got 1 turn in probably about 24 hours. A player turn, I don't know, and that's good enough, man. I don't know. I'm just really having a hard time doing anything really, and playing lots of computer baseball. I just realized something from lookups I've had in the rules that, maybe I understood vaguely, but I really don't like. Under default defense, any formation, or a formation, currently under orders may throw away its orders and adopt a defend in place. Now, this is essentially what Vive l'Empereur has. I'm done. I give up. I'm beaten. This was what core attack stoppage was designed for. Was the, I'm beaten up, I want to stop. But now, without having to make an initiative roll or get orders or anything, you can halt your attacks just immediately based on it's no longer suitable. The reason I bring this up, I had noticed this kind of before, and it sort of, I didn't realize the permutation, and then went and looked it up because I just had Soul get a core attack stoppage. Now, at least in Vive l'Empereur, there's a, after 3 turns of following an order, you can call it off. Which I still found way too permissive in terms of allowing you to avoid brutally bad situations. In addition, this game already has the... Now, this was not present in the earlier versions. Under... emergency withdrawal, a command can execute an emergency withdrawal, thereby canceling. The command must be under a threat of being decimated or destroyed due to being under heavy attack and about to be surrounded or attacking into murderous fire. That was already pretty damn, loose. Look, we're calling off the attack, but here's the problem. It required you to fall back. Here, you're basically allowed to declare victory And I'm not sure that I can't anyway, but I do not like the way that this loosens the overall, the commander on the field to be able to just halt attacks that are no longer producing the results he wants without having to send any orders, without having to pay for oh, I'm in a lot of danger retreat. Man, I don't like this. But yeah, I'm certainly going to allow it here with the assumption of, look, I've already achieved 95% of what I set out for. I don't think that I was expecting to have to take the entire, the underside of the hill. I really just wanted to get myself up here and parked there. On the other hand, there's kind of the question of, well, if I am succeeding, if I was taking it that, shouldn't I be able to fall back to a more defensible position on that hill? And I think the answer to that is also yes. What I really just don't like is this, yeah, I'm done attacking. Fought one round, marched forward, took some fire under Pickett's fire, and realized it's going to be bad. Instead of just calling a retreat, I said, camp down, we're good. Default defense. I don't know. It just, Jesus. It seems so against what the order system was meant to generate. And there were still situations where Napoleonic generals, yes, they were more disciplined than the Civil War generals, but there were definitely situations where Napoleonic generals went on following orders that were not to the best of the situation from anyone who had a godlike view. Part of the order following philosophy, part of the reason for writing orders and following them is that you have to project what you think the game is going to look like, and then you can call those orders off only through various mechanisms. You can't not pursue them. Now, there may be a requirement that you pursue at least one turn, which is essentially a loose cannon order, which tended to be less damaging than bad orders or misreading the future were. Anyhow, there are parts of this system I like so much, but I feel like the command system to it needs a little bit more reworking to get closer to what Dean Essig's concepts were in the original version, while still maintaining, the differences that the Napoleonic era has. And some of those are not well defined here. The loose definitions over in Viva l'Empereur sometimes work a little better. So here at the end of the 2 p.m. turn, the French have fallen back. Took some opportunity fire, the only way that the coalition could fire at them. The plan for the coalition is sort of saved at this point, because my roadway through is in good shape. Yes, there's still some risk, but I take a huge sigh of relief as I watch really First Corps reinterpreting its orders to forming a line to defend up there. Somewhere between an emergency withdrawal and a drop to defend in place. Is that too flexible? I don't know. It's such a weird situation. What is permissible, what's not, right? It's always an issue. Casualties, I reassessed my casualties. I had the coalition correct. I was a few off for the French, but there's kind of a problem with that. I can count the casualties here. What I can't count is the skirmishers killed. So far, 4 skirmishers have been killed. And so can I get an accurate count? Well, not 4 full units, but 2 full units have been destroyed by artillery fire, because they seem very susceptible to artillery in this game for some reason. Anyway, life still stuck in the, hey, let's wait until the morning is fully here, like, I don't know, 8, 9, whatever. Go to sleep then. Sleep until 5 p.m. and then say, how do I get out of this? I want to shift it a little bit, because Friday is going to be problematic if I'm getting up that late. I did it last week, or later, which is more likely. But yeah, I got contacted by another recruiter, and this keeps happening. It's so, actually, and by someone I had talked to before, who was like, hey, have you had enough time to study the stuff? No, I haven't bothered to fucking study the stuff, because I was hoping for a job where I didn't have to relearn algorithms and data structures that I will probably not need, for the job. Yeah, it's like I was just starting to come to terms with the, okay, look, screw it. I'm tired of this shit. It's taking too big a toll on my life, and I just want to unhinge and retreat from the world. I don't. But I hate the stress, and then I have the worry of, hey, first of all, I'm really bad at interviews, and then, which probably isn't surprising, but then there's also the, what if I can't do the job? I don't want to throw that kind of stress into play, where I get the job and I'm not good at it or whatever. And it's not an exact match of what I had. None of these are. Nobody does pure code review, pretty much. Into the coalition turn, a couple of interesting things. First off, the 2 attacks have stopped. But I was looking up the cav command, which has complex orders, wondering, do they have to make a check? Well, they don't. But the requirements are a little weird. So attack stoppage, if a command will execute engage orders during the current turn. I think what that means is that I could actually write engage orders as complex orders by making them a little bit more fancy in wording, and therefore not have to check attack stoppage if I'm not pushing into contested territory or whatever. That would prevent some of the worst cases, like, the First Corps, I think it was, pushing down to about here and just saying, nah, I give up, and turning and running for no reason. And I may, from now on, start playing it that way, just in the back of my head. Certainly what happened here is fine. But the important thing is that it means that I don't have to make it. I certainly don't have to make any checks with the cavalry, who have a complex order to begin with. Although it was intended to come up here, I don't know what that's going to mean. Like, this could destroy the entire order, or maybe I can skirt up to here and position myself. I'm not sure which. I can certainly call the order off and cancel it and drop into I don't know what. Okay. And then the final thing that was on my mind was, I don't think I've had any successful event rolls, and I've been making the checks, which is kind of weird. This is where we end up. No new troops coming on. some recovery happening here. I should probably throw a marker down by the French too, just to remind me, in case anything else starts happening. The slow way I'm playing, it probably makes sense. A little bit of plinking coming from long-range artillery fire. Very little effect to it, but still, it's a situation where, so long as, right now the artillery advantage is on the coalition side, but they're not allowed to fire it because they don't have orders. Being in a state of no orders means I cannot fire except opportunity fire, which again feels weird. But it's a different interpretation of what no orders means than what the old system used to have. No orders under the old system was a default defense, essentially. With that gone, with you not able to fall into default defense after a retreat, it means that, hey, my artillery park is not really set up and we're not engaging in gunfire, but we're getting shot. And it kind of feels like something should happen due to that. Either we return fire or we fall back. One of those two. Neither one is directly allowed. The only way I can fall back is with an emergency withdrawal or orders. Or mainly collects up around where it is. I found Kellerman's cav had drifted somewhere it really didn't belong, and I pushed them over to protect the right flank here against those cav. But it's it's going on 3 p.m. and that's relatively late in the day to be trying to start anything. I also don't really feel like I have tremendous capabilities here, so we're just plugging away at each other with firepower, see what happens. But, in a way, both sides are out of position now, right? The fact that this flank is advanced means that for the coalition, in comparison, means that the French capability to maintain a single line going down here is gone. On the other hand, it's much worse, I think, for the coalition. The cut here looks more dangerous than the possible cut there. But if I had a great deal of flexibility, I could see launching an attack and launching an attack. Maybe. I don't know. Just because there's 2 corps sitting over here that would come slamming in behind if anything's done. Right now I'm pinning down 2 corps. That was the plan. That was the plan for the coalition. Unfortunately, the plan was not to get flung back off the hilltop. Attempt to sleep before dawn. Didn't work. All right, first of all, we did have a random event. It was advanced reinforcements. Given the situation with the coalition reinforcements, that kind of doesn't work. It just turns them up a turn, but because, Doktorov is following one of these columns, I think the AGL under Kleinmeyer. Nothing can, there's just nothing I could do. I could just say, well, okay, I don't have to roll for someone or something. I could make up rolls, but I didn't do so. But we got some successes. We had 2 columns come in. Kleinmeyer, the advance guard, which is heading this way and is then going to work in conjunction with another column. But now life is a lot easier. However, I've got to try to follow my orders. So, unless I want to roll for initiative or something, Kleinmeyer is going to hold up and wait for somebody. And one of them somebodies would have been this other force here, which is under Buxhowden right now. Oh, joy. Which, first of all, Kutuzov wrote orders to Liechtenstein, changing his orders a little wee bit. Instead of trying to make the attack from here, it's going to be I'll have to fix that. He's going to shift up to the Pratzen Heights to follow his orders. That looks safer. It'll certainly make Sewell a little less scared. I've got a rally flag or whatever on Sewell, but I'm not sure I'm going to use it because he's a little threatened right now, and I think wants to move some of his forces around a little bit. But this force, its basic orders were to cut straight across to Pratzen and launch an attack over onto Koblenz and Puntowitz. Well, maybe I meant this road, but I could accept this one. So I started heading that way, and Kutuzov has moved over to talk with him, because there's so one of the options would be to get within vision and say, I can't, and call the orders off, because I don't have orders to attack my way up Stare Voldonarev. These guys did. There was never any intention for that. So he could probably blow his orders away no matter what. But anyway, I've got this, because conceivably I could kind of swing up this way or something. This would maybe be a justifiable attack, and I don't want to do that. I want to get him swung around behind, so we're going to do it that way. And what else? Francis still can't rally those things. And I've still got, a couple of columns left to bring on. Now, if the French had gotten the advanced reinforcements, this thing would have moved up, which would have been just peachy. On the French side, we got an actual event, but we sort of got an event for me, which was, hey, I'm sure wasting time and not getting very far through this game. I don't know how long it'll last, but kind of figure if I'm going to be awake instead of, playing a stupid computer game that sucks my brain completely on spreadsheets, let's fiddle around with this a little bit more. I don't know which I like more. I know which one sucks me in harder, though. Which are not the same thing, I think. So the French event, as opposed to my event, was a game-specific event. Murat is cautious. He can't roll for initiative for the rest of the game unless he gets this event again. And all his leaders have like a 1 less rating. So he's going to be a lot less effective at issuing commands. Otherwise, the French just reapportioned Sewell's line to face a different angle. This is another problem, like with bolted down units. I was able to comply, I think, with the bolting down. I'm not sure, I might have moved St. Hilaire or Hex or something. I don't mind moving a little bit, and if that means shifting the command a little bit at a time, I don't mind what the effects of that are. What I do mind is the full consequences of the bolting down, and I've talked about some of them. It really, among other things, it means that I can't counterattack with leaders. Now, it does nicely define the limits of how far that attack can go and whatnot, but it doesn't seem appropriate. It seems like a full-on counterattack should be able to include the leader, And with this version of the game, it's far more important. In the old versions, it felt more like the American Civil War games where, you're really not fixing bayonets and charging in defense all that often. But here, it's the only way to do damage with infantry. You can't shoot the enemy out of your way. I mean, skirmishers just are not going to be that effective. Yeah. Artillery ammo, I forgot to fire, I think. I forgot to mark. Coalition, no new orders, no new troops, but still fulfilling those orders, bringing more stuff up here, starting to move Buxhausen's command up into this general area. They're gonna have to hope that I get my delay reduction. These two commands both are on big delay reduction, as are these, and 5 and up. Yeah. The only effect of these is my artillery can't fire, which is pretty silly, but the artillery is not doing much. But now the French are beginning to unlimber some big guns, and it's going to make a big difference that officially I'm in chaos still here and unwilling to shoot any artillery, which feels goofy as hell. I really think there are some rough edges. At first I thought they did a perfect job on this. My memory from when I played, and I don't remember how many of them I played, but I'm pretty sure I played it, certainly all the ones, the 2 in Talavera and all the print and plays. But I had Marengo up here, and I may have even had, I don't think so. Nah, I think I just had Marengo up here. So I may have played that as well, using the rules, and then using the version 3.0 rules. And then by the time I started talking about it, I had very fond memories of this system. But of the version 3.0 version of it. But I'm really feeling like it's showing some rough edges that need to get buffed. And it's not absolutely clear to me how to fix them, And unfortunately, it's a dead system at this point. But anyway. Another little change. There's a lot of them in here. The old system only allowed straggler recovery every other turn, until you hit night turns, when it was every turn, because night turns are longer. Okay. But I think it also had a modifier to benefit your straggler recovery at night. And so it was actually more likely to get them. But also you could boost yourself to larger straggler recoveries than you would get that are possible in this. Again, it's sort of like they rounded some of the edges off the old system. Edges that I kind of liked. They were things that were these little modifiers and stuff. There are plenty of modifiers on here, but yeah, there's nothing. Wait, maybe I'm wrong. Yes, it's still there. I'm sorry. And I forgot about the no order status bonus. Oops. Yeah. I mean, that's just peachy for Sewell, who can be in that, but not so much for these guys. That's fine. We're okay. These guys are in no orders and haven't been getting the advantage. All right. And the Cav accepts its orders. No new troops come in. French artillery is beginning to have an effect. I killed 2 guns this turn because I've got my guns on top, not to protect the infantry, but rather so that I can fire if I get the orders before movement. But they're just not coming, so boom, boom, boom. I'm getting a little worried with the French. Starting to see this position develop. I think I want to commit my guards, and apparently this is kind of weird. I don't know what's up with these guys. They start here. They're not officially attached or anything. That's Oudinot's Grenadiers. I would kind of like to grab them. And I think throw a line up here. I also want to pull these guys back. Now, the way the orders are written for this command, I don't think I need any new orders. I think I can just pack up and leave. They're a picket force, and I'm beginning to get a line of sight on the cav moving up here, and maybe on this from back here. That may be cut, I'm not sure. We'll use a bendable piece of paper. It looks like I can at least see a column of dust arising there. And line of sight is about ready to go down. I don't want to be surprise attacked in the night or anything like that, so I'm going to pull my forces back into a stronger position. Of course, that leaves this gap. You know, I'm defending too much territory at this point. I want to hold this. Pinning Bagration's right wing, the most effective forces they have. Yeah, and they're thinking, well, I'm pinning 2 corps. You know, yeah, pretty much. One thing that you begin to notice is how small a battle this is. It doesn't feel like it should be, right? At least in terms of the game. Looking to see. I think the original gives the historical notes for it so that I can see just how big an army this is. Yeah. Those are big numbers. So we've got Francis and Alexander have about 85,000 troops. That seems like a lot. So I'm not sure the scale on this is the same as in the Civil War stuff. That sounds like big army, and there really just aren't a lot of pieces on the board. The scale here, which is 100 points per strength point, 150, I think that's about the same. Now I have to look it up. Infantry step is a little bit bigger here. It's 150 instead of 50, or instead of 100. So, you know, 50% more counters would be on the map. But it still seems like a small battle. On the other hand, the actual units are huge. And that's more indicative of the type of combat that you're facing. You see a fair amount of this size unit in the Civil War stuff, but not, I don't know. And now I'm kind of confused because, you know, I haven't done Thunder at the Crossroads for a long time. I've done the regimental scale one, which obviously had tons and tons of pieces, and I've done I remember Terrible Swift Sword pretty well, but yeah, Thunder at the Crossroads is 2 maps. I think it has more pieces on the board, but this looks so tiny. It looks so tiny. You know, when I compare it to like the Leipzig battle, obviously that's a bigger battle, but this feels like the size of some of the more, I don't know, just some of the smaller battles. But I just don't feel like I have enough pieces to cover everywhere. Alrighty. I'm going to try to push through until dark, and we're getting close. Until dark and until light at the same time, I guess. Different worlds. But The size thing, though, is kind of important because it is an approachable game. You could play this in a weekend, or you could probably play the full Austerlitz, the normal Austerlitz. That's now the only scenario in the in the update. In maybe in a long day. This is a dusk turn. I gotta get some orders over here to Sewell because him without orders is problematic for the same reason that no orders here was problematic. Of course, I was only facing cav before, but now my artillery, and I don't have a whole hell of a lot. I think I just have the one battery up there. Yeah, he was undergunned. Can't fire defensively. Now that's not going to matter at night, so maybe I want to keep the bonus and not slip into defend orders until daytime. The range, though, here is too far for the visibility, so no more fire is happening. That's a nice respite. Although I think I may have, because I got defensive orders, but that may have been last turn over there. Doktorov's big column has come in, and Kutuzov has gone over to talk to him. I'm going to start prepping tomorrow morning's attack, which, means these guys are under orders. As soon as night falls, I'm going to say that people can discard their orders. I don't think there's any rule about that, but there's a rule that you can discard orders at any time. So, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to say have to continue attacking. It also doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say, rest for the night and you'll do exactly what you were doing before. It may depend on what the orders are, right? If the orders are to march across the board or something, sure, I got no problem with that. And I tend to allow units to rest because there's no indication of how fast you have to march. There could be a lot more detail required in the orders. Anyway, it's time for me to start figuring out what the overall attack is and then start trying to get those orders out. Now, Kutuzov himself doing them is not going to work well, which means I may start relying on initiative rolls at night for the two emperors so that they can go and give the orders that they wish to give. Notably, what I think I want to do is launch an attack on the center here instead of all the planes I had before. It's a simple command. I don't think we're going to get that whole Wehrroth problem in line for it. However, you're still stuck with lousy Kutuzov in terms of things. I got to make some tea, but then I'll finish up the French turn. Remember, I was going to dispatch some forces down there. I'm kind of low on reserves here. Of course, that's true on both sides at this point. Until Langeron comes in, the coalition doesn't really have enough forces positioned to face this. And he may never come in. That's the danger of that E space. It's a trick. It's a false choice. You should never take it. I've never done it before. I've always said, well, I can take the -1 up here, but I'm not going to take that -2. I think D is normal. I've got it written down as normal in both cases. Let's check that. And let's do it on camera just to be really obnoxious. Somehow I love doing that. Yep. Just A and E are penalties. So, there's plenty of room off B, C, and D to get your army in a lot quicker than trying to rely on this. But if you get lucky with this and shoot up there real fast, neat stuff could happen. I guess. Night falls. Boom. Forgot to recover these. The Napoleon managed to get his orders off and started to be executed by Bessier. Now, this is a weird situation, like I said. The Grenadiers are sort of tagged off along the line. I allowed them to be attached to Bessier, but Bessier doesn't really have a corps. It acts more like a division, but I'm just allowing them to operate together. I'm not sure about the legality, and they're pushing down. You can see these guys coming down to Koblenz. I could recall them, I guess, but they're fine there as part of that line. And then tomorrow, overnight, Kutuzov's going to, along with the emperors, try to set up a series of orders that will get us a victory in the morning against this cluster. What happened over the last day, and I'll probably start the next video with this as well, but it's kind of weird, and it's been a long time since it started. The French marched back up onto the heights at Stary Vinhoradri, which was sort of the focus and the center of where the coalition forces were supposed to align. They were supposed to come in, hold this, and sweep around. Well, everything's too delayed. Nobody came in time. Langeron's still lost, which is horrible. They did this, and it causes a huge disruption in anything the coalition was planning. In fact, you could probably make an argument that the coalition might just pull back if they saw this kind of advance taking place. But they didn't. That wouldn't be any fun. And the old scenario for the 2 days allows for this. It's always been my nightmare situation. Well, casualty-wise, it didn't go well at all. Attacking was painful. I took 28 casualties to 11. So the French did not get away very easily, and that mainly had to do with the fact that that the coalition forces had a fair amount of artillery between them, were able to get it deployed, and were able to cause some serious losses to Soul's corps. In addition, Soul was pretty much wrecked because of the stragglers, etc. He got some bad attacks as well, where he had good numbers going in. It won the battle and got a bad trade-off on it. Some of that may have been unfair, like I may have cheated, but that happens. But yeah, now we're going into another day where the French have basically traded away a lot of casualties for some terrain that really disrupts the ability of the coalition to be able to launch the kind of attack I'm used to. Normally I position myself all along this ridge, and either if I'm playing, I say, well, the French wouldn't attack. That's unfair, And Napoleon's whole point here was to draw them in. The French don't attack, and the coalition's able to get off a coordinated morning assault. Much better than historically happened. And now I'm left with a much, much harder situation with forces stretching from here all the way down to here that I have to deal with, forces that aren't even on the board yet. However, the French are not in the most pleasant position, to be honest. So we'll see. I might be able to sneak up in the dark and launch an attack early or something. But now I'm facing the First Corps and the Cav, as opposed to Soule here. and I'd much rather be hitting Soule. So we'll see, if Doktorov's big command can be brought around, swinging to the left. Basically, use that whole left wing to try to smash into Soule and come up from behind. But meanwhile, Napoleon's got his reaction to this new situation. There's a big gap up here. The question is, who's gonna, try to do something with these forces? And I think the answer is the coalition, but again, they're gonna have a hard time getting orders out everywhere.